Mm. The Easter egg for this session will be announced by the presenter during the presentation. Please be sure to follow the KOTESOL code of conduct, and having your video cameras on during the session helps the presenter. You can send your tech questions on the chat, and I will try to answer them from my desktop account, which is the host. I'm using my phone for talking. Please welcome Erin Wuchte with a wave or a smile. She has been living in South Korea for 8 years as an actress, writer, and teacher. Her long-term goals involve committing to and growing with a company while strengthening her skills as an actress and a journalist. So Erin, when you're ready, please begin.
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking your time to join my session. So my session's entitled Finding Yourself, and it is, as Sarah said, I've lived here for 8 years. So within the 8 years, I've found myself through teaching, writing, and acting, and not in that order, very mixed order, very different order. So this is my presentation, and we have the agenda is the introduction to the session, as Sarah introduced us. She's our host, and her job is to keep me on track, because I may or may not get distracted, more likely may. And I'm Erin Wuchte, and I moved here in 2013 as a teacher after graduating university. And I became more interested in theater as I began to live in Korea, more and more interested. So I came here as a teacher for a academy. I don't know if you know it. It's called Cheongdam. And through teaching and getting involved in theater in Busan, I was able to integrate the two into what I have found is it helps my acting to be a teacher, and it helps my teaching to be an actress. And all three help my writing as well. So they're kind of integral and they work together in tandem. So I want to explain to you how I do that. Okay, so before I start, is there any questions? Does anybody have any questions about me or about this session? Yes.
Hi. I think you said you got interested in acting after you arrived here as a teacher. So did you do any acting before Korea?
Yes, I did in high school. There were plays in high school, but I never really landed a big part. You know how schools usually, I'm from the US, so schools in the US usually have a theater department, and they would have, extra roles. So I was usually cast as the extra role, and I was interested. However, when you tell people you want to be an actress or you want to be an artist, a lot of times when you say things like that, people are, not very supportive generally. If you say I want to be a teacher, that's great, that's amazing, enriching the lives of our future generations. Or if you want to be a doctor, people are like, you can do it. But if you say I want to be an actor or an actress or a painter, people aren't very supportive of that. So I kind of just gave up on it and just went to university and studied international studies and anthropology. So then I came over here and I met the theater department in Busan English Theater Association. So they were like, you don't have to give up on this dream. This is an amazing dream. And, I'm from Florida, so I'm not very supportive, but it's okay. So little icebreaker, if you have some paper in front of you, I would like you to think about the correlations between teaching and the entertainment industry. And if you can write down at least 2 ideas, that would be fantastic. If you can think of 2 ways that teaching and anything in the entertainment industry. And then we can share one now. And at the end of the session, if you feel like you've learned something and we can confirm what you thought, or maybe we can learn from one of your ideas. we'll share one now at the end. So does anybody have an idea of how teaching and the entertainment industry correlate?
I can see that John has posted something in the chat. Erin, can you see it?
All right, yes, storytelling. Yes, storytelling is very important. And I think a lot of times when teachers storytell without having a background in acting, they're not, as the host said, facial expressions or emotional. So I think that really it helps if you're trained in both, because you want to captivate your audience's attention. And in the classroom, who is your audience? The students, right? Well, that's what I like to think. So emotional labor, yes, it takes a lot to teach. You have to put your emotions into it to, in my opinion, to be an effective teacher. You have to be emotional. And, when I first got to Korea, that was one of the things that I was told a lot by the principals, was that I was too emotional. But I think it's important that you care about your students, you care that they're learning. If you just come in and you teach very analytically, that's how they're going to receive you, and they're not going to connect to you as a teacher or a performer on a different level. I'm sure you've seen, what is his name? I'm sure you've seen actors who don't have very much of an emotional connection to their character. You can tell. I don't know if you've seen Twilight, but Kristen Stewart in that movie is one of the actresses that I don't think connects to her role. You can see that. And reputation counts. Reputation does count. Yes, in the entertainment industry, if you're not kind to the employees that work with you, that's something that has an effect on the jobs you get. And same thing counts with being a teacher. If you have a bad reputation with your students, then people aren't going to want to take your class, right? All right, so think about your other one as we're talking, and then we can share at the end. Let's begin. Okay, so these are my beginnings, and I already explained it a little bit. And I wanted to get into how I made the connection between theater and teaching. So at Cheongdam, we have something called the CTP program. That's the Creative Thinking Project, not program, project. And with the CTP, what students do is they are given a sort of outline and they fill in the blanks, and it's like a script, and they perform it in front of a green screen in the classroom once every other week, and they're recorded. They're uploaded onto a educational program, and then the other students and other teachers can watch it and rate them and comment, oh, your presentation is so funny, and you also give them a grade. Did I like the grading part of it? Not particularly, because it focused on the grammar, the vocabulary, rather than the actual point of the project, in my opinion, which is the creativity. We want to foster creativity because creativity really is at the soul of everything, in my opinion. Learning anything, any new skill, creativity is very important. So when I moved to KJC, which is another hagwon here in Korea, they had speaking tests. And I also didn't like the speaking tests because they were just reading or memorizing and presenting. And I don't think that's a real effective way, in my opinion, to learn a language. So I asked if I could redesign the whole program, and they said, sure. So what I did is I changed it to students in teams, and they would create a script completely on their own, whatever they wanted to make it about. They could the lesson that we were learning so that it would be easier for them to make the script. However, they didn't have to stick to that. They could do whatever they wanted. As long as they asked my permission, teacher, can I not do it on animals? Can I do it on dinosaurs? Sure, a dinosaur is a type of animal. So then they would make the script and they would practice it and memorize. And the focus was on creativity and not on grammar or memorization. So the kids, at first, they were really nervous, as anyone is when they're performing. So they didn't know exactly what to do. They were given autonomy for the first time in some of these children's lives. Teacher, can I make props? Sure, you can make props. Can I use motions? Can we cut the scenes? Sure, you can cut the scenes. So the students could design their own movies, basically. And some of the kids took it to another level where I would record them and they'd be like, teacher, stop. We have to move the scene over here. So they would move around the classroom in different scenes and they would ask me to stitch together the movies. So if you give, do you know that book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, They'll Ask for a Glass of Milk? Well, I think that's the same way that creativity works. If you give students a little creativity and a little leeway, they'll ask for more. And that's great in regards to creativity. So that's how I changed it. And yeah, these are my beginnings. Sideline Dreams, and then Cheongdam, and then I got involved with the theater. And I did a lot of Shakespeare. And Shakespeare was nice, although we mixed it up with some other plays like Actor's Nightmare. I don't know if you know that play. But in joining this community, I learned almost everybody was a teacher in this community. So you would share ideas. You would say, oh, this student's complaining about this. Hey, well, in rehearsal, we did this. Maybe you can use this tip in your classroom. So for example, in rehearsal, something that you would do is at the end of rehearsal, your director would say things are doing well and things are not doing so well, and how you could improve. And I think that is a tip that could be used in the classroom. At the end of class, this is, what you're doing really well, this is what you're not doing so well, and this is how you could improve. And I think in some classrooms, a lot of times we focus on either what is good or what is bad. This student is doing this well, this student is not doing this well. Well, how can they improve, right? You have to act as a director and a actor when you're a teacher. You have to direct the student in the way that will enhance whatever you're teaching, whether that be English or whether that be science. You want to direct them in the way that their education is going. All right, so yes, present, research, and becoming a better actor, teacher, writer, and self. So upon getting involved in theater and acting, I got better at being myself and letting others be themselves as well. Teaching a better understanding of human nature. Kids will be kids. This is a very important part. It is, as I said, giving people their autonomy to do what they want, to be who they are. And I think that's the problem working under the confines of a lot of principals and a lot of schools. They have these school rules that they want the children to follow. But people are as unique as snowflakes, right? Not every student learns the same way. Not every teacher teaches the same way. And not every school works the same way. So you have to let kids be kids and let adults be adults. And I think that's something. Does anybody here teach children? Oh, sorry, I should have asked this in the beginning. Does anybody, who teaches here? Who's a teacher? Is everybody here a teacher? Woohoo! Okay, now who teaches children?
I did a lot, many years.
Okay. And who teaches adults?
I teach both.
All right.
I don't know if university students count as adults, but maybe.
College student.
Yeah.
I don't think as
College.
a student, when I was a university student, I was very adult. But we all, and that's the thing, we all define adults differently, and we all define children differently, right? Some people say, oh, there's toddler, there's infant, there's babies. Here in Korea, I think 5 or 6-year-olds are sometimes called babies. I have to, I stay home with my baby. I'm like, oh, your baby, how old's your baby? 24 months. That's like, in my opinion, that's a toddler. That's 2 years old. But, it's case by case. And I think the same can be said with creativity, right? We all have different levels of creativity. All right. So my main topic is teachers as performing artists. How are teachers performance artists? Anybody have any insights? How are you performing when you're teaching?
Well, just public speaking in general. Usually it's not the way we communicate if we're having a casual conversation. So it's a different, like, I don't know, vocal register maybe, or it can, for me, it feels like a performance sometimes. Everybody's watching me if I'm lecturing, to the whole class.
Exactly. And does anybody teach in a different way than is present? Sarah?
Yeah, I wanted to add something about performing. If I'm feeling sick or under the weather, I can't let that show. And I think that would be true for actors also, right?
Absolutely. When you're acting, I was just acting in a movie last year, and it was filmed. We started filming at the beginning of November in the woods off this mountain. And in the beginning of December, it was warm. Beginning of November, it was warm. And I just had on this little jumper, and that was my costume. But as time progressed, we needed to get certain scenes down, right? However, in late November, early December, it gets very cold, especially if you're in the mountain. However, I could not change my costume. That was my costume. So I was freezing. I'm sure in some of the cuts, you can see me and my co-actor just like blah, blah, blah. And it's really hard to stay focused when you're under the weather, when it's cold. Some classrooms don't have air conditioning. Some classrooms don't have heaters. So that is a very good point. You can't let it show. And it can affect, if you do let it show, it can affect the students. It can affect your people watching the movie, right? So you have to.
Something just came to mind too. I actually give the same lesson 4 times. And so it's useful. The second or third time, usually hopefully it's getting better. Sometimes by the 4th time, I feel like a robot, or it can get a little boring. But I really need to give the same energy every time to all of my groups, the first through the last lesson.
Is there something that you do to facilitate this?
I just coincidentally went back to campus last week, and just connecting with the students, like maybe doing a little chatting or just interacting with them directly is effective. It gives me energy and just like a reminder, like why we're doing this. So it's nothing super special, I guess, but just like having the like human contact connection with students, I think.
I think that's very important. It's the 1 second, sorry, it's so related. When you're acting and you have to do the same scene again and again and again, a lot of times, sometimes they want you to do the scene again and again differently. You have to do the same scene, but you have to do different motions each time. Sometimes you have to do the same scene with with the same motions. So it does get monotonous. And the first time, it's maybe not your best, your lines aren't perfect, but you do it the second time and the third time, you're like, that's great, that's amazing. I did it 100%. But then the director says, go again. You're like, but I thought we got it. Oh no, the lighting wasn't good in this shot. And you're like, but that was the best acting. We need to do it again. The sound boom wasn't in the right position. So that is also a really big problem. So it is that communication, not only talking about your feelings, but also where are we at right now? And I have that talk with my students. Go ahead, Rhea.
Oh, yeah. There's so many interesting things, but I think something that you're tapping in on is something that I frequently reflect on that I like about teaching, but is challenging and is similar to acting, that they're very physical, they're multifaceted, where it's a very physical thing. You know, you're standing, you're constructing a space in the room, you're considering how the other people, it's like blocking and acting. You have to consider where they're sitting and how that affects the dynamics and the communication, but it's also emotional and it's intellectual at the same time. It's this delicate balancing act. And I wouldn't want to have a desk job. I think that would absolutely kill me. I'm just not the kind of person, like I like doing some work like that, but if that was where I had to plant myself all the time, so I remind myself that teaching has that. But for me, the support is the self-care program that you have to just keep yourself balanced and keep your energy focused. And you have to be very reflective in both teaching and acting to realize, like, oh, this has affected me like this, and then make adjustments. So yeah, I just thought this is an interesting conversation. Wanted to tap in on that.
That is perfect transition. Just you're like reading my mind right now. Um, but it is, and that's why I wanted to call it Finding Yourself, because in teaching, I had this particular student who I taught when I first got to Korea at Cheongdam, and when I moved to KJC, I was teaching her as well. And I asked, I mean, years later, and I asked her, how is my teaching different now? She said, you're a lot more relaxed now. And I found that interesting. And I was like, how does, I wanted her to elaborate, but also, you're not going to ask a student for a review in the middle of class, right? But I did think about how I taught when I first got here, and I wasn't very self-reflective. I was more focused on the analytical. How can I teach this information the fastest and get the fastest results? And it was more about quantity than it was quality, that connection, that rapport with my students. It was more about what my bosses thought of me than the rapport with the students. So now, like you said, I think about how am I affecting these students in their lives and how they affect me. So I would go, into class and I would say to students, how are we doing today? And go one by one. How are we doing today? Some, in the beginning, they're all like, oh, I'm good. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy. But as you keep doing this, the students get more comfortable with you and they start to tell you how they're really feeling. And when you know how your audience is feeling that day, then you can get a better sense of how to present that day to that particular student. And I think this touches on what John was saying, is when he has to do the same lesson over and over again, he doesn't feel like he's giving his best in each class. So it's talking with the other people. And I think that's really important, that communication. I would ask my students, well, if you're not having a good day today, that's okay. Just tell me and you can take a break. You can go outside, anything like that. John has a question. Am I teaching full time? I just got a job editing the newspaper as of March, so I'm not teaching full time currently, although I am doing substitute positions here and there. But I was teaching full time for 7 years and mostly children. And while I was doing the teaching at academies here, I was also doing the radio 1 or 2 nights a week, and also occasionally doing theater. So it was a lot on my plate. Sometimes I would have the radio and theater and teaching, but they all really helped each other. Radio is presenting and teaching is presenting, and also acting is of course presenting. So I'm gonna link this article, but I've been reading, and I was going to show you this quote later, but I've been doing, oh, you can't see this because I'm not sharing that screen. Let me share this one. So I read this article recently, semi-recently, when I knew I was going to be doing this, and it's why teachers should be trained as actors, trained like actors. And like we were talking about, it's high energy and performance. And you're acting as a role model. And when you act, you're taking on that role. And this is not the only article I was reading. This also research. So I'm going to link both of these articles so you guys can read them when at your leisure, because this one is 14 pages. And if I sat here and read it, that would not be very productive of me. But acting and teaching, how they go hand in hand. So apparently 4 decades, this has been in research. So it's not just me making this correlation. It's not just you guys, it's researchers around the world making this correlation. Let me bring back up my PPT. All right, so does anybody have any questions about the correlation between acting and teaching? Let's see the chat. Oh, if I should bring up before I bring up the little Easter egg, I should tell you now I am working for the newspaper doing writing and editing. So that is another creative outlet that I'm using. And I'm also looking into other positions for acting and the radio. And our little Easter egg, I don't know if, yes?
Oh, I have another question, Erin, but you can do the egg first if you prefer.
All right, do you see my little Post-it in the corner by the star?
Okay.
Easter egg, number 6 is Dead Poet Society.
Oh, very applicable to your presentation topic and what you do in education. I was wondering, do you or have you before done theater-oriented activities with students, or do you use other acting methodology when you're working with giving instruction around speaking, for example? Like, how do you bring it into the classroom?
That is a great question. When I made that speaking test, when the students present, I would hype them up before, which is something that we do before we act. One thing that I do in particular, not every actor does it, but we shake everything out. So I would give the students a minute alone. Each team would go outside and they can practice outside where nobody's watching them. They can do all the funny motions that they want. They can make all the funny sounds. And then I would invite them back into the classroom and they would have to perform in front of everybody. And some of the other teachers would take the students out and they would be recorded not in front of everybody. But I made the point, as actors do, they present in front of everybody. And if everybody is presenting in front of everybody, you kind of lose your inhibitions because everybody's on the same level. And I think that's how it is when you act. When all the actors are together and practicing together, if they forget a line, they forget a line. It happens. So I just tell the students the same thing. We got to shake it out. We got to Don't care what anybody else thinks about us because nobody knows our script, right? The first thing is the nerves. How to get rid of the nerves. We get rid of the nerves physically is important. So that's the shaking out. And then mentally, I tell the students, nobody has your script. And that's the same thing when you're acting, doing Shakespeare or any movie. Nobody has your script except me. And I don't care if you're memorized. And then the third thing is just realize that nobody here is judging you because they all have to do it. So when you're acting in a movie or the radio, for example, you can't hear feedback. When you're presenting theater, that's sometimes where you get that feedback, but generally people clap. If you perform, people will clap. Generally, people don't boo. I know in England, there are people who boo, but in the US and Korea, if you do any sort of performance, people believe that you're brave because you are being brave. So people will clap for you. So that's what we do in my class. After everybody's done performing, we clap.
Great. It sounds like you have a lot of strategies and just like classroom culture that makes the students feel really comfortable and like
Absolutely.
a very supportive environment.
Absolutely. That's so important when you're acting or teaching or learning as a student or watching as a audience member, right? You have to be supportive of each other because we're all humans. Okay, I did want to circle back to the second item, if anybody has any more correlations or if anybody has any more questions. I did want to mention a fun fact because I'm all about fun facts. I find them fun. But Dead Poets Society has Robin Williams in it. And he would, whenever he acted on a movie, he would get the director and the production company to hire homeless people so that people would have jobs. And I just thought that was a fun fact. All right, somebody says media content or tech. What tech do I use? Or...
So I don't know if this is the second correlation where I'm connecting education and the entertainment industry, maybe. And just like for me, I use a lot of podcasts and YouTube videos and, different forms of media or different technology with students that is connected to entertainment.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. Especially this day and age, I think it's important to reach students on the level that they're at. And I mean, this day and age is a technological boom we have right now. I mean, I have Wi-Fi on the bus. So my students, they love YouTube. When I was teaching, they would love YouTube. So I would show them a YouTube video, or what I would do is I would record them doing their speaking test, and then we could watch them all together and talk about, oh, what did they do well? What did they not do well? Or if the students were particularly shy, we would just watch a little excerpt from a TV show or a movie. What are they doing well? What are they not doing well? How can they do it better? So, yeah, the host just sent a message if everybody wants to read that. But yeah, technology is very important. And I think it touches on how different students learn. Because some students learn by doing, some students learn by listening, some students, I mean, not every student will learn the same way. And I think that's the same can be said about TV shows or movies, audience members or actors. Not every actor uses the same methodology. You have, for example, you have method acting. Not everybody does method acting because, well, it can be dangerous, as we know. The Joker from Batman. Method acting can be dangerous. So not everybody does learns or acts or memorizes or teaches the same. And I think that's important that students and teachers both understand. How do we get shy students to come out of their shells in the classroom while using drama? This is a very good question. It's very tricky for me because I'm not a shy person, right? So coming from a not shy person to try to get a shy person out of their shell, the number one thing to not do is to not push them. You have to, as you're teaching the student, you want to first learn where their boundaries are. This student will do this, but they won't do this. And I think once you understand their boundaries, I'm not saying you can push them, but I'm saying you can lay out a roadmap for going around the boundaries or for managing them. So with shy students, they may be comfortable speaking. However, they may not be comfortable speaking while looking at people. So sometimes if students have to give an individual presentation and they're shy students, they're more shy than being with somebody else. So if they have to give an individual presentation, I will tell them they can turn around. So they can look at the board and they can do their presentation with hand gestures or what have you. Because some of the students who are shy, they're just shy because they don't like looking at people while they're talking. So that is slowly building up to presenting. When they are speaking and presenting, some of the time I say turn around, or once they're comfortable with that and they can look at these students, I tell them to look beyond the students and look at the wall. The other thing is also writing down your questions. So they write down their questions and then they will say their question. So shy students will very often raise their hand because they have like a question, but then they'll be like, and I'm like, write down your question and I'll come back to you. So then I'll come back to them and they'll just read their question. What age groups do you work with? I used to work with mostly elementary school. So from 1st to 6th grade. And it's really interesting because the first graders, very often they're less shy students, but then as they go into puberty, they get more shy and more self-conscious. But one of the very important things to realize and to talk to them about is everybody feels this way. On some level or not, I even feel this way. And I tell them when I'm acting in a movie or when I'm acting in theater, I'm very nervous and I'm very scared. Even talking to you guys, I'm very scared, but I just do it because I get out of my head. And I think that's the important part, not thinking too much about what I'm doing. I just say, just do it. I don't care about your grammar. I don't care about your vocabulary. Just try your best. And if you're creative, you get extra points. Great ideas. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. I love you. So yeah, I definitely foster creativity and encourage it. And I think that's one of the things that positive reinforcement, I think, isn't used as much as I think it should be in classrooms, at least here in Korea. Negative reinforcement is often used more than positive reinforcement. And I think the same can be said in acting. When a director says, that scene was great, that scene was amazing, I want to do better the next scene. But when a director says, you didn't have your lines memorized, we're 1 week till curtain, what's wrong with you? Everybody has their lines memorized. And that's another thing, is comparing. I don't compare my students. They like, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, I like Michael teacher more than you. Well, we're different. Everybody's different. And I think that is at the core of creativity, isn't it? Creativity is different for each person, and creativity is different for students, actors, everybody. So it's one of those subjective truths, life truths. So we have like a minute left, 2 minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, I think I just have a thank you on here. Oh, this quote came from one of those articles, and I did want to touch on it. Knowing what you want to do is a long way from being able to do it. So a lot of my students, they want to speak English, or a lot of my acting friends, they want to be an actor, but they have the drive, but they just don't know what to do to make it happen. So I think laying that roadmap and giving people the tools so that they can achieve what they want. And I think that's what directing is doing. And that is what teaching is doing. You are laying those stones for the roadmap to somebody's life. This comes from a managing director of an Uncommon School. It's a nonprofit school education.
They call them the Big Five publishers.
I'm sorry? One more time?
I think it was an error. We have
I think it
just
was a
few
blooper.
seconds left. So Erin,
Oh.
can you wrap it up for us?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for visiting. And final thoughts are foster creativity and complete autonomy. And I think they go hand in hand.
Okay, very nice. Thank you, everybody. You can turn on your mics if you want to say thanks or clap or anything like that, or
Thanks,
icons are
Erin.
fine.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you
a great
for
day,
joining.
everyone. Oh, by the way, this can be on the Discord if you want to discuss this topic more. And the session is complete. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you. Oh, wait, there's a chat. Thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording now.